gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Unfiltered. I'm your host, James McFarland. We much appreciate the perspective and the opportunity to learn from one another. Our story is not our story. Pandemic like this for us to think.
I have focused on using my art as a tool.
Because the opportunities are vast.
We have a crucial moment on which to engage in that study right now.
I'm your host here, James McFarland. Welcome to Unfiltered. Let's get started. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Unfiltered. I'm your host, James McFarland. We much appreciate the perspective and the opportunity to learn from one another. Our story is not our story. A pandemic like this for us to think.
I have focused on using my art as a tool.
Because the opportunities are vast.
We have a crucial moment on which to engage in that study right now.
I'm your host here, James McFarland. Welcome to Unfiltered. Let's get started. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening from the Atlantic provinces, and good day and greetings to you wherever you are around the world. I welcome you to our show today on Unfiltered, and we have a great guest, and I'm really excited for what we're going to be discussing today. And I would introduce you to the series, because this is the beginning of our series, and because we have something really exciting. We decided that we were going to start somewhere towards the end and then work our way back. And I hope our guest today would return again, because I know he's such a fountain of knowledge in this area, so that we can pick apart the very beginnings. But let me introduce the series to you. We are talking about the case of Ambazonia, the Southern Cameroonians, and we are asking questions about the solutions and the way forward. We have had a long-standing crisis and conflict. Some would say it's a full-blown war that has raged for the last 6 years. And so I'm going to give you some historical origins of the problem to set the stage for this series, and then I'll introduce our guest, and then we will head right into it. So we have our guest right here with us, so be patient. I'll get to that introduction. So ladies and gentlemen, the Cameroon with a C, also spelled Cameroon with a K, was a German colony from 1884 to February 1916. When the Germans were defeated and ousted from the territory, and during this World War I, by joint Anglo-French and Belgian forces, Britain and France decided to set up a joint Anglo-French administration in the newly conquered territory. But the initiative was short-lived as a result of the failure of this cooperative Britain and France cooperation. Through the Milner-Simon Agreement, they decided to divide the country in 1919 along the Picot Provisional Partition line to permit each of them to administer their own territory separately with the establishment of the League of Nations. The separated territories became mandates of Britain and France. Cameroon Republic did not succeed German Cameroon. It was not a continuation of German Cameroon. There was no special bond between Cameroon Republic and German Cameroon, except as a distant colonial master. German Cameroon was dead and buried in the Versailles Treaty of 1919, and new masters took over this territory through the Treaty of Versailles. And the new masters that took over the Cameroon Republic, which gained its independence on January 1st, 1960, after German Cameroon had long left, was French Cameroon as the successor state. Now, on the other side, British Cameroon, the successor state that emerged, was the Southern Cameroons from the British side. So we now move towards a period where each territory was governed according to the administrative system of Britain in the case of Southern Cameroon and France in the case of the French Cameroon. This meant that the legal, educational, monetary, and even political arrangements were significantly different in the two territories. With the creation of the United Nations in 1945, the territories changed their status from mandated territories of the League of Nations to trust territories of the United Nations. A very significant ramification of this change of status was that the trust territories were to be administered in preparation for self-government. The territory administered by France, French Cameroon, got its independence on 1st January 1960 as the Republic of Cameroon. Nigeria got its independence from Britain on October 1st, 1960. The territories administered by Britain, British Southern Cameroons, and the British Northern Cameroons, which were semi-independent territories administered as part of Nigeria, were to decide through a plebiscite to get their full independence by joining either Nigeria or French Cameroon. On 11 February 1961, the plebiscite took place. British Northern Cameroons voted to join the independent Nigeria, while British Southern Cameroons voted to gain its independence by joining the already independent Republic of Cameroon. There was no third option for self-governance for these territories. British Southern Cameroons and the Republic of Cameroon agreed on a two-state federation and drew up a federal constitution that effectively guaranteed an independent administration of the states under a confederal system of governance. That federal constitution, noteworthy, came into force and effect 1st October 1961, and the entity became the Federal Republic of Cameroon. But let us go back for a second. In September of 1961, before the Southern Cameroons officially entered into that federal arrangement, French foreign legions and troops of the Franco-Cameroonian military alliance marched into Ambazonia. The British troops quietly handed over the territory of Southern Cameroon. First, the British acted as if these foreign troops were there to prevent terrorist activities that could have spilled over from the French Cameroon, given the situation that was occurring on that territory in the lead up to their independence. Now, these troops came under the guise of providing security, but what happened was the British simply packed up and left and allowed these troops to continue to be on that territory. Now, on October 1961, the Southern Cameroons gained its independence when it became a united, when it became the Southern Cameroons, and therefore terminating the UN trusteeship that was in existence. The French Cameroon troops that were stationed in the Southern Cameroons at the time were kept there under the guise that they were going to be there to keep the peace while the United Nations finalized the arrangements and agreements between the two nations, that is the French Cameroon and the Southern Cameroons, that will culminate in a confederacy of independent nations as agreed and ratified by the 11th February 1961 UN plebiscite. However, these French troops just never left. They just never left the territory. And when citizens of the Southern Cameroons began to become anxious about the presence of foreign troops on their territory, what happened was the president of that French Cameroon, President Amadou Ahidjo, to quell down his own anxieties, sent more troops into the Southern Cameroons. And those troops have just not left until this day. However, on the 20th May of 1972, President Amadou Ahidjo called for a constitutional referendum, which saw, as they put the numbers, 98% voter turnout voting for a unitary constitution. The country thus changed from the Federal Republic of Cameroon to the United Republic of Cameroon. On the 4th of February 1984, the current president, Mr. Paul Biya, passed a decree changing the name from the United Republic of Cameroon to the Republic of Cameroon, the name that French Cameroon got when it became independent on January 1st, 1960. As such, many people felt that it was a return to French Cameroon and an annexation of the Southern Cameroons. Another constitution was drawn up in January of 1996, making the country a decentralized unitary state. Yet, political watchers observed that the delayed or cautious implementation of that process was going to become problematic. And in fact, it did. A lot of things happened in between, and we're going to explore it as we go through this series. But I wanted to give you that background, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about something that our guest was very involved with that formulates part of that history. Let's say this. On 9th of January 2003, the SCNC and SCAPO filed a complaint with the African Commission on Human and People's Rights against the Republic of Cameroon. Among other allegations, the complainants alleged that Republic of Cameroon is illegally occupying the territory of Southern Cameroon. The complainants alleged that the Republic of Cameroon had violated Articles 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 17, 19, 20, 22, 23, 24 of the African Charter. The SCNC and SCAPO ultimately sought the independence of the territory of Southern Cameroon, and in a decision reached at its 45th ordinary session on May 27, 2009, the African Commission on the Human and People's Rights found that the Republic of Cameroon had violated Articles 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 11, 19, 26 of that charter. The Human Rights Commission determined that Articles 12, 13, 17, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24 had not been violated because it said that those provisions would apply to a time period from when the Constitutive Act came in place, and so those provisions were not applicable. The Human Rights Commission further recognized that under the African Charter and broad international law, Southern Cameroon meets the definition of a people because they manifest numerous characteristics and affinities which include a common history, linguistic tradition, territorial connection, and political outlook. The Human Rights Commission declared itself incompetent, rationale temporis, to rule on allegations that occurred prior to 18 December 1989, which is what we were talking about. Now, the Human Rights Commission noted that autonomy within a sovereign state is acceptable in the context of self-government, confederacy, or federation, while preserving the territorial integrity of a state party can be executed under the African Charter. The Human Rights Commission recommended that the respondent state, the Republic of Cameroon, should, among other things, enter into constructive dialogue with the complainants, and in particular, the SCNC and SCAPO, to resolve the constitutional issues as well as grievances. Now, I want to provide to you a little bit of the background of our guest today, and it's going to be intertwined in some of what we've just heard. Our guest is Mr. Denis Atemkeng. Thank you so much for joining me today, sir.
Thank you, Chaps.
Yes.
I'm glad to be here with you.
Yes. Mr. Atemkeng is a political, legal, and historical scholar on the Southern Cameroonian and Ambazonian question. He's a policy analyst and has worked with international organizations such as the African Union Commission and others. He's famously known for challenging the African Commission on Human and People's Rights in a case where he sought a ruling from the African Court on Human and People's Rights that Article 34.6 of their protocol was inconsistent with the treaty which established the African Union, namely the Constitutive Act, which upholds fundamental principles such as the rule of law, condemnation, rejection of impunity, and promotion of human rights as enshrined in the African Charter. He contended further that Articles 34 sub 6 of the protocol is an impediment to justice as it prevents African citizens having access to the court, especially victims of human and people's rights violations who are unable to secure remedy from national courts or from the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. He was also one of 18 complainants in the case of Dr. Kevin Ngumne and others acting on their behalf and on behalf of the SCNC and SCAPO, which we just referenced above, and the Southern Cameroons versus La République du Cameroun. This was heard before the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. In the complaint, the complainants recite that La République du Cameroun was guilty of violating the rights of hundreds of citizens of the Southern Cameroons and the collective rights of the people of the Southern Cameroons. The decision in this case was a key factor in the fight for the liberation of the Southern Cameroons. He is an ardent advocate for the rights of the oppressed, for justice and peace in the ongoing war in the Cameroons. He writes extensively on this issue. He's now the spokesperson for the Coalition for a Referendum to end the ongoing conflict in the Cameroons. He also happens to be the uncle of several of my classmates from the Seed of Wisdom.
Right.
I only found that out the other day when I had the flyer up and people were reaching out to me saying, oh, you're getting my uncle into the interview room. And
Right.
so thank you so much for joining us. It is a great pleasure to have you here with us. And I'm looking forward to the conversation that we're going to have today.
My pleasure, Chefs. My pleasure. My pleasure.
Yes. So let's get to it. I know you've written extensively on these. You are an authority on a lot of things around these issues. But how did the coalition come about?
Before I get to that, let me correct something that you said in your summary. The summary was very rich and very clear, but you said that the Southern Cameroons joined La République du Cameroun in a federation. That is a very, very big mistake.
Yes.
Because the law creating the federation was passed unilaterally in La République du Cameroun's parliament and imposed on the Southern Cameroons without the Southern Cameroon House of Assembly having any chance at all even to vote on it, not to mention our own people. So this is a foreign law, a domestic law of La République du Cameroun that was imposed on us and called a federation. So we should never forget that. All Southern Cameroonians talking about their relationship with La République du Cameroun must know that this is pure and simple annexation, armed robbery. Armed robbery, nothing else. It is armed robbery against the people of the Southern Cameroons. So there is no legality of any kind whatsoever in this matter. And I have repeated that the most important element in this fight is the legal element, because the status of La République du Cameroun is acquired only through legality. It is not just acquired by being in the world, no. La République du Cameroun must cite the treaties that created its own boundaries. It must cite all of this. These are the same tokens by which the Southern Cameroons is claiming its own right to exist and its own right to have its own territory. all our neighboring countries have vowed under Article 4B of the African Union Constitutive Act that their sovereignty is limited to the territory they acquired on their day of independence.
Right.
If they were to follow this, the territory of the Southern Cameroons emerges without any conflict. So I just wanted to be clear on that issue.
Thank you so much. You know what? That's a great reason why, I love having these conversations. And I thought, it would be great to have you here because you have that word of knowledge and you are absolutely right. And sometimes when we speak on these things, it's so easy to mistake, especially, and it's a huge mistake, to make that mistake to think that they agree, but as you put it correctly, it was a unilateral agreement and then imposed rather than a bilateral negotiated agreement of what the final agreement would be. It's funny because here in Canada where I live, we have, we call them the first peoples, the indigenous peoples, the peoples who were here before the settlers came. And because of the history of Canada, when we talk about the relationship between the settlers, sometimes they use the term, we are all treaty people. And I point that out because you said it correctly by saying, for us to properly look into this issue, we have to look at the treaties that brought this nation, the claims of these nation states to nationhood. We have to look at the treaties that brought them into existence. So that is very powerful. So let's talk about this coalition for a referendum. I know I'm starting midway, but as we go along, the questions are going to lead up to inform what we're talking about. How did it come about?
It came about because, this war has been raging for 5 years.
Right.
And the facts of our own case are very different from all other cases because there isn't one line of any text anywhere that binds the Southern Cameroons to La République du Cameroon. There isn't any agreement of any kind. There isn't any resolution of the United Nations that gives sovereignty over the Southern Cameroon's territory to La République du Cameroon. So when we saw this war raging on, people being killed on a daily basis and so on, we said, how do we resolve this? First of all, we were thinking that there would be an agreement to sit down and talk. But the reality is that La République du Cameroon realizes that if it sits down, what is it going to say? So it will not come to dialogue. From the first day when the Swiss had this opinion, I also wrote to the Swiss asking some cardinal questions on the elements of the neutrality and so on and so forth. And I told many people in the IG that I don't see this thing ever taken off. At that time, nobody, of course, believed me. I told them that I don't see it coming, taken off. And it has turned out that it has not taken off. So what do? We thought that the most practical solution would be a referendum. A referendum, of course, as you know, is an opportunity for the people themselves to express their opinions about the critical issues that are facing them. Like in this case, the issue of sovereignty over the territory of the Southern Cameroons.
Right.
But, that is a very difficult question for the people of the Southern Cameroon, not because we have had another referendum before in 1961, but because we are the sole owners of that territory. La République du Cameroon has no right to an inch of the Southern Cameroon's territory.
Right.
But we are willing to say, when I say we now, I mean we nationalists are willing to say, look, we will subsume our claims, territorial claims, and bring this matter to the Supreme Court of the people. Let the people decide where they stand on this matter. Because I've explained to our people that I can take up the gun and fight for Southern Cameroons. I'm a 1000% Southern Cameroonian. But that is not to say that I was elected by the Southern Cameroon people to represent them. No. Right. Nationalism is a feeling. You get the point. Yes. Nationalism is a feeling. There are other Southern Cameroonians who would not care whether Southern Cameroon was burning or not. Yeah. But there are other Southern Cameroonians who will pick up the gun and fight for their territory. That is nationalism. But under international law, nationalists are not necessarily representatives of the people. So therefore, we agree that the only way to resolve this matter is to put it before the people. A referendum solely for the people of the Southern Cameroon, because this cannot relate to the people of the La République du Cameroon at all. So every single person who believes in the will of the people, who believes that the wishes of the people are supreme, is in this coalition. Because whether you're a federalist, a unionist, an independentist, as long as you do not say, because I'm a federalist, I want my federalist opinion to prevail over the people of the Southern Cameroons. Because I'm a unionist, I want to impose my unionist opinion on the people of the Southern Cameroons. Because I am an independentist, I want to impose my independentist opinion on the people of the Southern Cameroons. As long as you say, I am willing to listen to the voice of the people, you are part of this coalition.
Right.
So this is how the coalition came about.
Wow, powerful, very, very valid. So in your view, I will get substantive. What do you see as an advantage? I mean, you've laid out some of the rationale, but what do you think are the advantages of a referendum vis-a-vis perhaps all the other things that are being pursued right now?
This referendum will resolve and settle every single proponent or party in this conflict. It will settle the unionists, it will settle the federalists, it will settle the independentists, and it will settle La République du Cameroon. I have told our people that this is the most dignified solution, way out, we can give La République du Cameroon. This is an honorable exit we are providing to La République du Cameroon. We are believers in the rule of law. We are believers in the fact that even when I have the power to kill you, I should still be able to give you a right to speak. So right. La République du Cameroon, yes, we are willing to say to La République du Cameroon, now, if you are willing to stop this war and listen to the people, all of us should put down the arms and ask our people where they stand. We are willing to grant you the benefit of the doubt, to say, look, you are claiming that you are fighting for the people of the Southern Cameroons. You are claiming that the nationalists who are fighting are a small minority. Okay, let's agree. Let's ask the people. Let the people tell you where they stand. If they say they are federalists, they will form the federation with you. If they say they are unionists, the status quo will remain with you. If they say they're independentists, then you have also to accept the fact. So this is the reason we thought that a referendum is a solution that settles every single party in this conflict. Not only does it settle every single party in this conflict, it is the most reasonable solution that the West that we have been pleading to, the West that we have been appealing to will accept. You see, the idea of dialogue is too vague. You see, the outcome is not guaranteed. The people who go for that dialogue are not known. Their skills in negotiation are not known. And we have seen the attitude of the Americans, Nagy in particular. If we were to go into any dialogue with La République du Cameroon, they may easily gang up against us. So if we propose a referendum, we should secret all those maneuvers and all those gimmicks, all those intrigues that the West or the allies of La République du Cameroon itself is planning against us. We should secret them all.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes. No, powerful. And I want to engage in this a little bit, but let me just tell our viewers, for our viewers, if you're watching, you can either go to our Unfiltered with Cheps page and watch from there, or you can watch from my Facebook page, Cheps McFarlane. I know that there are some people attempting to sign into the Zoom call, but I want to be focused because we have a lot to cover, and we don't want any distractions inside the studio room here. But you can follow us live on Facebook and also share and make sure that you encourage others to join. So you've laid out what I think is a very clear and to me till date, the clearest statements that have been made about what a referendum can do to settle the question for each party. I wanted to ask you, given that it has been said that we are too disorganized on our side, there's so much internal squabbles, you think that this question of referendum is the most appropriate to say, there's not going to be any more accusations of, oh, he's a federalist, he's a unionist, he's this. It's going to be a question, you choose your side in the privacy of a ballot box, and the outcome is going to settle the question. We don't need to have any animus against each other. Let's focus on the civic responsibility. Is that what you're thinking when you say it will settle all the questions?
Yes, Chaps. I said it. If you are not one who wants to impose your own opinion on the people, just like La République du Cameroun is trying to do, but if you are fighting for the people, you cannot fight for the people and say they have no right to express themselves. Therefore, our people must be given a platform from which they can speak with their own mouths about their faith. This is what is called self-determination, allowing the people to exercise their free will about their own future. You know, this is it.
Okay. So let me ask you now the interesting question. How then do you, for practical purposes, how do we avoid a repeat of 1972?
No, first of all, 1972 was a fraud. The people of La République du Cameroun were 4 times more numerous than the people of the Southern Cameroons. They were not the ones who voted to join La République du Cameroun. You get the point. The first plebiscite was about the Southern Cameroon's independence. We were the ones who voted in the plebiscite to join La République du Cameroun. You cannot now, and the issue of the federation was the only link between the two sides. You cannot come now and get your population to vote to cancel the federation, and you say the people of the Southern Cameroon voted. No, because whether anybody in the Southern Cameroon voted or not, the people of the La République du Cameroon would make the decision for us, isn't it? Yeah. So therefore, that was not even a referendum. It was an act of fraud. It's pure theft, just as they are. It was theft, nothing else. It was theft.
Right. Yeah. So
this referendum we are proposing is purely for the people of the Southern Cameroons.
Okay.
Because so there are only 2 parties in this conflict.
Right.
And the issue in contention is only one: the territory of the Southern Cameroons.
Okay, so why would Cameroon adhere to the outcome of a referendum when it has flouted? I know I was reading some of the work that you've put out there, and you state categorically, authoritatively, that Cameroon has basically flouted a lot of all the international treaties with respect to this matter. So how do you think they would adhere to the outcome of the referendum given this history? Or why are you confident?
No, Chaps, there are processes through which all armed robbers go through, all thieves go through before they actually confess their sins and their theft. You know, first of all, when you discover an armed robber, his first reaction is to kill you, isn't it?
Yes.
When he discovers that he cannot kill you, he begins to argue. When he finishes arguing, he will confess. Right. So these are the processes through which we are going with La République du Cameroun. Be sure that colonialism is colonialism everywhere in the world. Right. And it has behaved the same everywhere in the world. Ethiopia vowed never to let Eritrea go. Sudan vowed never to let South Sudan go. Indonesia vowed never to let East Timor go. All of them refused categorically that there could be no issue of discussion, not even to mention a referendum. And that is why the wars in these countries lasted for so long. Right. But at the end of the day, I have explained that, you see, a colonialist is like someone who believes that he can stop a river by building a dam. So he builds the dam. When the river overflows, he tries to increase the height of the dam. Until he discovers that I'm just fighting against an impossibility, right. You know? Right. I'm just fighting against an impossibility. This river will continue to flow. You get the point?
Yes.
Let me tell the people of the Southern Cameroons that we can only grow stronger, not weaker. You see, financially, we'll grow stronger. Intellectually, we'll grow stronger. Socially, you look at the social media that exists today. So what is happening in the world is that people who are being suppressed with time, gained sufficient power to oppose their oppressors.
Right.
Remember slavery, my brother. You know, remember slavery. You know, there was a time when if you were a slave and your master decided to shoot you, the next door neighbor did not even notice that someone had shot their dog.
Right.
Isn't it?
That's right.
They were completely helpless. Nobody at that time could believe that these people who can be killed at will ever be free. But they are free today. Yes. So this is the same thing repeating itself here. The people of the Southern Cameroons will be free. And Cameroon, no matter what it says today, is just in the stage of armed robbery. That stage will come when Cameroon will confess. You know, Australia has asked for pardon from the Aborigines. Canada has done the same, and so on. You see, so these are processes. So all the former colonial powers are beginning to realize that their evils have to be atoned. And so they are offering the apology. So Cameroon will do that also with us. No matter what it is doing to it, all of this is just gimmicks. It's intimidation. So the people of the Southern Cameroon should remain determined. Their determination has the effect simply of shortening the period during which they will suffer, you know? But La République de Cameroon cannot win. We will win this war and we will win this battle and own our territory as we are supposed to own it. Nobody should ever fool you to say, look, you know, we love each other so much. Let us just break this boundary that separates our two houses and join the two houses, especially when one person has 2 children and the other one has 20. You get the point?
That's right.
This is a law of nature. The United Nations was wrong. The international community was wrong, even to propose that there should be independence by joining or any form of joining. Wherever the international community has tried to join two separate people, it has ended up in conflict and war because nobody will give up their own identity to be colonized by their neighbor.
Wow, that's a powerful point, and it's a good segment into my very next question, which is why would the international community favor this option over, say, a negotiated settlement or a political settlement? Or do you envisage the option of a referendum as part of a political negotiated settlement? And if so, which comes first?
Now, let me ask you the question. What in your mind do you call a political settlement? Let me just ask you that question. If we were to meet with La République de Cameroon today, what do you think we're willing to give up? Because they will say to you, oh, you see, in any mediation, you must give and take and so on. What are we going to give? You see, I began by explaining to you that we have decided voluntarily to say, okay, we are going to say we are putting aside the claim over our territory so that our people themselves should speak. You get the point? Right. But I told you that La République de Cameroon hasn't even an inch of a right over our territory. So the issue here is, if you go for negotiations, what are the issues to be discussed? Because you are not going to that negotiation to try to patch up the relationship. If it is a relationship that you want to patch up, you will say, I'm going to, it's like a marriage that is about to break, and you say, let us see if we can patch up things. You get the point? Right. There's nothing to be patched up with La République du Cameroon. No, Ambazonia will own itself from now on. So if you go into dialogue, what are you going to negotiate? Tell me. So first of all, explain to me your idea of a political dialogue or a political negotiation or political settlement that you are talking about with La République du Cameroon. As far as I'm concerned, the only issue to be discussed is whether La République du Cameroon put down its claim title over the territory of the Southern Cameroon. If it cannot put it, it should leave. Full stop.
That is a very interesting point that you made. And when I was talking about a political settlement, I guess it encompasses all of this, you know, but it's just a matter of how do you begin? Is it a situation where the international community would obtain the consent of Cameroon for this referendum to take place, or is it a situation where the international community would say, this is what we have designed as the most appropriate solution, which is a referendum, and we are going to put in place the logistics to ensure that it happens. So are they going to ask for the consent of Cameroon or not?
No, in all previous cases, the consent of the colonial power is always necessary. And the simple reason is that they're in possession of the territory. You get the point?
Right.
So once by armed robbery, they get hold of that territory, the international community, while putting pressure on that colonial power, will also allow them to consent to it, because you must have access to that territory to be able to organize a referendum, isn't it? And they are the ones controlling that access. So because of that access, it is critical that the colonial power also give its consent. But they begin by refusing, as I told you, but international pressure and just the force of truth, you get the point?
Right.
Forces them to accept a referendum, inevitably. So La République du Cameroon, we keep telling you, this is the most honorable solution we can give you. Paul Biya doesn't care about his soldiers. He's offering them for nothing. You get the point? He has turned them into armed robbers, looters, killers, assassins, and they just waste their lives for nothing. And there's nobody in that country who has either the leverage or the power to overthrow that fellow and bring some sanity to reign. So, you know, nobody in that country wants this war. But because Paul Biya declared it, they are bound to their God to continue killing his own citizens until the day when he dies, maybe. So, you know, that's how it is. That's how it is.
So it leads us to interesting territories. You know, for example, you know, in the UK there, they had Brexit, and it took some back and forth negotiations for them to get to that point. And we have said, you know, if Britain can leave the European Union without any issues, and they have joined the European Union voluntarily, why shouldn't that standard apply to everybody else who's seeking sort of this sort of political solutions to our legal problems? As you said, our legal case is ironclad, but the international community says, yes, we know that, but we think that this should be settled politically. So I'm asking you, what do you envisage? Or have you thought about what the question of the referendum would be? Or what kind of questions do you think would be asked in the referendum?
Yes, of course. Those who believe in the referendum, of course, definitely have an idea about it. But this will be negotiated between us and La République du Cameroon on the question. Definitely, the issue of the independence or the separate existence of the Southern Cameroon must be on the ballot box. The issue of some form of treated federation or confederation or some kind of association with La République du Cameroon will be on the ballot. You get the point? Right. So it is possible. If you want to have a third option, which is that of unionists or that is keeping the status quo, that too can be on the ballot. But these three opinions are the opinions in the Southern Cameroons. Those who believe in a federation, what form of federation? It has to be, even if a federation were to win, it must be based on a clearly defined treaty now. It cannot be something that will just be worked out under the table it cannot be bilateral. No, it must require the participation of the international community as far as that kind of federation is concerned. So the issue of the separate existence of the Southern Cameroon must be on the ballot box. The issue of some form of association with La République du Cameroon, whether it is confederation, federation, or whatever, must be on the ballot box. And then optionally, if the issue of the status quo, you know, will be there, let it be there also. But our people will decide where they stand.
So, Mr. Denis, I love this initiative. And you just mentioned something that I want to get your sense of. What do you think would be the by effects? Because it seems to me that what the Coalition for a Referendum is pursuing stands a chance of providing a lot of education, because you've talked about two things. You've talked about the fact that there is going to be a need for the consent of the occupier. You're going to have to negotiate with the occupier what the question is. So do you think that just educating Southern Cameroonians and Ambazonians on this issue also serves to educate them on generally the nature of mediation, the dialogue, because people always say, you know, like Republic du Cameroon, you get on the table, we get on the table, we get our independence. But if we start to think practically, you start to see that there's going to be a lot of negotiations. Even if today we were granted the independence, we're going to have to decouple the two nations. We're going to have to decouple the administrative entanglements, financial entanglements, economic, all of these things, and which would be negotiated. So is this coalition also, as a byproduct, an educational opportunity for Southern Cameroonians to learn more about how states become states and how states, cease from becoming, states, to put it in another way?
No, definitely the issue of referendum. You see, the referendum is central because why? Because claims to sovereignty can only be substantiated, can only be legalized by the people. That is why you see in the Soviet, when the Soviet Union broke down, all those countries that became independent had to go through the process of referendum, right? Because the people must legitimize the claim. You get the point? The people must legitimize the claim. That is why I told you that even though I'm a nationalist, the people of the Southern Colony must legitimize my position. You get the point? Right. They must legitimize our claim, even to our own territory. So it is critical that throughout this process, we explain this, people get to understand that it is not something that can be imposed without negotiation. You get the point? It must be negotiated with La République du Cameroon, like it has been negotiated with all other colonial powers, And I even mentioned to our people that, let me just give a small example. Look at the case of South Africa, where most of the land was stolen by white people, isn't it? But today, can you just seize that land without negotiation? Tell me. The true owners are there, isn't it? Right. But because of the complications that have arisen over time, you cannot just seize that land without negotiation. So because of this situation, we always have to understand the full details behind the necessity to negotiate with the colonizer. And that is why, for me, even while we are fighting on the ground, there should be talks open between the two sides so that we can begin to soften and make the both sides understand. Let those who still have the mind to understand from the other side begin to understand. Maybe it will shorten the process of the war. You get the point? Just to war, we are fighting, they're fighting, nobody is talking to each other, nobody is even understanding each other. No, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It is very important that once we put down this issue, there should be a channel through which we are dialoguing with the enemy to understand, to shorten this war on the ground. I know when it comes to public issues, you see, like they are trying to hold AFCON in the Southern Cameroon to prove something. All of those gimmicks and games, they have no importance. You see, once you engage them directly, they will discover all of those things have no importance. You better go to the sincerity of the matter and put down the cards. So that, because you see, we believe in truth. We don't believe in falsehood and propaganda.
Right, right. So that is it. So in a sense, I really like this area, because what you're saying, and that's what everybody would say is, if you're in a battle or fight with somebody, or a debate or a quarrel, you always need to try to give somebody the opportunity to save space, right? To save face. And so you're saying, whereas if we say negotiations, it sort of heightens, it raises the stakes. But if you say a referendum, even though there are going to be a lot of things negotiated for that referendum to take place, that lessens, that makes it more palatable, at least to the other people, because they are not on this place where they think, oh, if we go here, we're coming as, perhaps equal parties to a negotiation. Whereas if it's a referendum, you're at least recognizing that you need my consent So in some way, you're recognizing that, you know, I have some authority.
Absolutely, 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 absolutely. We are giving La République du Cameroon a very honorable door to exit this war. Yes, that is a dignified way to exit this war, you know. And I've said it, they will come to it, whether they like it or not. There's no other option for them. They can't continue just to kill their own citizens for no reason, just to please Mr. Biya. No, they cannot continue to kill their people to please Biya, even though they are killing our own also. All of this is, you know, my brother, if you are near to America, you hear the Black Lives Matter movement.
Right.
Now tell me, when the rest of the world sits and sees Africa killing and butchering each other, if Black Lives matter to other people, why should Black Lives not matter to us?
Tell me that question too myself.
Tell me.
Right.
Is this proof that Black Lives matter? That we are butchering each other for something that all of us, the two sides, know that it is wrong for La République du Cameroun to lay claim to a territory that has absolutely no title over. So this is the mindset of thieves, rogues, armed robbers.
So that leads me to my very next question. So how do you get Cameroon, in your opinion, how do you get Cameroon to engage in a conversation that proffers this referendum option, that makes it you know, an option that should be pursued?
No, in a matter like this, first of all, the minds on our own side should engage the reasonable people on that side. That as an introduction. You see, we must identify people on the other side who are at least still willing to see the facts, people over whom evidence, the facts still have any influence. Because you see, for armed robbers, facts, evidence does not mean anything, but there are still people in that country who can be influenced by facts, who can be influenced by truth, who can be influenced by evidence. Those are the people we need to approach with the facts, with the advantages of a referendum for both sides, with the with everything that goes with it. You get the point?
Right.
They can't just keep saying, oh, we have the gun to kill them. We'll kill them until we take over they will not take over our territory, because everything depends on us, not on them. As long as the people of the Southern Cameroon have made up their mind that this territory is our own, we are not allowing the strangers from La République du Cameroun to just simply come in and confiscate our territory and turn us to strangers. That is how it will be. That is how it has been throughout history. Remember the fight of Africa against European imperialism.
Right.
The Europeans did not want to live easily. You know, they did not want to live easily. Look at the kind of treaties that France did in order to continue binding Africa. You get the point?
Right.
This, yes. So all of that is to tell you that the reality is that they will give in, but it is for us to who are believers in justice, who are believers in peace, who are believers in the fact that there is no need to kill any additional person in this war. Let Diomgute, let Atang and Giannis, let them go mad following Biya to kill their own people. But we don't believe that anybody else should die. So it is for us, the responsibility is ours to engage people on the other side who still have some reason at all. Who still have some reason. That is how we will gradually spread the information to the rest of their own people.
So what, in your view, is the coalition's sort of, I know maybe you can't disclose certain things, but has the coalition sort of envisaged a plan that they are going to sort of roll out on how they're going to engage the different stakeholders on this issue? I know part of what we're doing is part of that information campaign to inform people, but what other things are you considering?
No, the things are in the works on how we will engage all the parties. We will not only engage La République du Cameroun, But as I mentioned before, we will engage the Western world, which is the only part of the world that has shown some interest in this conflict. You know, the rest of Africa has not even noticed that there is a genocide going on. They have turned their backs on us, but at least the West, even though they are hypocritical, at least they are showing some interest. The United States has passed 2 resolutions on this. Canada is talking on it. The European Union is talking on it. So those are the people who have shown some humane level of understanding, whether they even look at the facts or not. The fact is that they are the only part of the world that we count on to be able to bring some influence to bear on the enemy. So we will also address our concerns to the international community, to the Western world. And if necessary, why not? We also explain to China and all the other people who may have some influence over these people.
Great. Thank you. Those are very clear. It seems as if this has been thought out very well, and it's exciting. You know, I may hold different views on certain things, but I think generally it is exciting because this is, as you put it, this is an option that for anybody who knows something about conflict, you have to give the other side an opportunity to save face so that they can engage with you in trying to resolve the issue. That's just fundamental. So that's why this excites me, because I think it's something that has been sort of talked about within our community, but up till now is when somebody has really taken the bull by the horns and says, I'm going to stand up, I'm going to defend this position, and we're going to build around it. So kudos to you, sir. I want to ask you one.
Thank you.
Yes, I want to ask you another question, and perhaps this is the biggest and the most complex of the questions.
Okay, let us see.
So everything is in order. We get the UN, we get the West, they're all on board. Cameroon is prepared to give their consent. You come down to the question of how do you identify who the Southern Cameroonians are that are going to participate in this referendum? And how do you differentiate them from the rest of the non-Southern Cameroonians on the territory in order to ensure that we don't have external influence?
Okay, you know, this will not be the first occasion in history where this is happening. I explained to you, Eritrea and Ethiopia, they spoke the same language, they lived together, but when it came to that, there were formulae that would enable the distinction between who is an Ethiopian and who is an Eritrean. The same thing in Indonesia, and so on. Even in Algeria, where the French were fighting. Yes. So this is not a new thing to the world. You get the point. Right. Let me go back to the issue of South Sudan. In the case of South Sudan, they agreed that if your both parents, one or both parents are South Sudanese, you qualify to vote. If you were permanently resident in South Sudan before 1956, you were qualified to vote. You get the point? Right. So we, as the people of the Southern Cameroons, have to sit down and agree on what we propose to be the eligibility criteria. Mm-hmm. So if we say that, for example, anybody who was permanently resident in the Southern Cameroon, say from 1958, 1957, 1956, is allowed to vote, it would not be difficult for us to identify who has been permanently resident there, isn't it? It would not be difficult. That's right. And so if we say anybody who's whose both parents or one parent is from the Southern Cameroon, it will not be difficult to identify, isn't it? So we have said that the registration process, you see, people have been talking about rigging, and I've said that, look, let us stop being euphoric, not euphoric, but developing a phobia about La République's rigging. If you control the registration process and you make sure that the results don't get into their hands, you're almost done. Because these are the ways they do. Since they usually compile all results and give them, they have the time to cook them and change them as they want. Right. But if we arrange the referendum in such a way that all the elections, the results are certified at each polling station and the result declared there, before the referendum commission compiles the final result, everything will be clear. There'll be no way for anybody to play around with the results, isn't it? There'll be no way. We can come to registration now and say, okay, let us go on an LGA by LGA basis. Who will come to LBLM who is not a LBLM person and pretend that he's a LBLM person, so he's trying to register there? Nobody. You get the point. Even those who are trying to infiltrate will embarrass themselves. Now, let us come to the towns like Kumba, Boya, Victoria, where we mingled up. Now, what if we go by the traditional meetings where everybody is asked to register in their traditional meeting, you know, so that you use your traditional meetings to register? All of these are just ideas that I'm just popping out from the top of my head to resolve the issue of infiltration, isn't it? To resolve the issue of infiltration. So eligibility, when we come to it, we will learn from previous experiences. And since our own case is also unique, we will see whether there's something we can add to the previous experiences to improve the eligibility criteria in our own case.
Wow. You know what? I gotta give it to you, sir. I have not heard anybody for all the talks that have been talked about this referendum question. I never had anybody who provided that many options around the eligibility and how we can deal with it. So kudos. You guys are certainly thinking very, very sophisticated about this, and they're very correct. Now, so do you? Who would you prefer? Who would you? So I'm going to ask, it's twofold. Who would you prefer within the international sphere to sort of be involved in this administration? Because I imagine certainly, you know, our people will be involved. Do you think French Cameroon people will be involved in this? Not in voting, but in the setting up of the logistics? Or would it be an entirely international matter?
No, definitely some limited function may be given to, not given to La République du Cameroun, may be carried out in cooperation with them. In the past, it was generally the UN, where the UN was involved. It was the UN that distributed the material. It was the UN that helped establish the polling stations and so on. So there's so much that we cannot do without the cooperation of La République du Cameroun.
Right.
The essential thing is to agree that since they have agreed that this referendum should go, they must bind themselves to the process. Because let me just mention this. What will happen if they decided that they wanted to attempt to rig this referendum? They are just going back to square one, isn't it? To renew the fighting all over, because they will not have solved anything. So they agree that we want to solve this problem once and for all, and then they go back and try to rig it. It will not have them. It will not have them. It will not have anybody. If La République du Cameroun at the point of saying, okay, let's go for a referendum, decides that I will try to see if I can rig it, then the thing goes back to square one, even if they were to win. So we believe that once everybody understands the principle behind the referendum and the fact that the intention of the referendum is to try to resolve this conflict once and for all and create two neighboring countries that can live in peace and harmony and prosperity and mutual help. Because I keep reminding everybody that, look, this war will be over and La République du Cameroun and the Southern Cameroon will become good friends. It has always been like that. You see the wars that occurred in Africa for decolonization. After it was all over, isn't it? The colonial countries have become the best friends of their former colonial masters, isn't it? So this is how it is, my brother. So let us not be limited in our understanding of history. Let us see that this is simply a temporary incident which is caused by a few people and by some people whose minds are possessed by demons or whatever. You get the point. But this will be over, and the two peoples will live in peace and harmony. You know, the two people will live in peace and harmony. You know, so this will happen. So let us understand that. You know, so really.
So are you getting a lot of? I know you've been talking quite a bit on this on several platforms and trying to educate people and inform people. How are you feeling about the response that you're getting?
No, of course, many people are appreciating the fact that they're understanding more and more what the referendum entails, and even this issue of rigging. Many people are now saying, "Oh, we see that we were amplifying the idea of rigging beyond what it was." You look at it, you can pin down a few areas that you take out of the hands of La République du Cameroun, and it cannot do anything. The rigging will collapse. It will collapse completely. So we don't need to use La République du Cameroon's identity cards at all. No, we don't. Once we identify on the basis of the eligibility criteria who has a right to vote, that's when we issue a voter's card to that person for the purpose of the referendum. So we are not going to use La République. Even if La République was to decide today that all its identity cards, we will put that those people belong to the Southern Cameroon, it will be a waste of time because they will not be used when the referendum comes.
Right, right.
Yes, they will not be used. So, people are reacting positively. Of course, there are some people who have not yet understood. Some people say, "Oh, we have had Kadinatumi carry out a survey, CDN carry out a survey, this carry out a survey, so it has already shown that." No, I've explained to our people that a survey is not a referendum. You cannot replace it. Because you see, in these surveys, maybe 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, even 5,000 people took part. What is the 5,000? What proportion of the population of Southern Cameroons? So it can be used for the purpose of estimation, but it cannot be used for the purpose of a referendum. Because a referendum is no longer simply a process of approximating or having an idea, but it is actually the process of establishing who amongst those who are qualified to vote have taken a position on this or that subject.
So, that's all very great. So for all practical purposes, let's say a referendum takes place. What do you envision in terms of what is going to become of the the losing side in the referendum? So because wouldn't it be, because technically, if the people say a majority voted for, say, federalism, let's just use that example. And so, there was the next majority coming after that had voted for the zero option, the independent option. And then a smaller had voted for unionism. What then becomes of that population of people who lost that vote if the majority vote is for federalism? How do you have you contemplated, or are you is the coalition contemplating how you then manage the relationship of, now you have a clear people who have expressed an intent for independence, even though they were the losing side? How do you integrate them now into the larger winning majority?
No, that is not a problem. There will be a short-term problem. In all elections, the losing side may protest, they may go to court, they may agitate, they may do protests and so on, but that is only for a brief period. It is like every other election. A referendum is like every other election, especially that during the campaigns, we have told our people that we are going for a referendum because all of us have agreed that we will abide by the freely expressed wishes of our people. So whatever are these wishes, we have said that let the argument of force give way to the force of argument. During the campaigns, the Federalists will explain to the people of the Southern Cameroon why they believe in federalism and why the people of the Southern Cameroon should choose federalism. The Unionists will come to the people of the Southern Cameroon and try to convince our people why they should keep the status quo with La République du Cameroon. The Independencies will come to the people of the Southern Cameroon and tell them why they should have their own country of their own. You get the point? So after that, there will be a brief period of hard feelings and so on, but once they realize that all of us had agreed that we want to respect the freely expressed wishes of our people, they will be angry for a short while, but afterward they will toe the line. Now, let me remind you what happened in Indonesia. When the Indonesians, the East Timorians were given autonomy or independence, and they voted for independence, Indonesia got mad with them. Many people were killed after the referendum. You get the point? Because of the way they had voted. And it might still happen. But that is the barbarism that we are fighting. That's the barbarism that we're fighting. calm down. And that is why it is important that during that period, our people who are in La République du Cameroon have every interest to cross over and vote in their own villages, so that if things turn sour, they have at least some protection.
Wow.
They have at least some protection. Yes.
Interesting.
Because we must anticipate that for a short while, the blind people will get angry, they will continue the killings, but that will be the end of it.
So you think,
once and for all.
So you think that the nationalist tendencies, I'm just saying, and this is a scenario where the nationalists don't emerge as the majority. So long term, you think the nationalist tendencies that have built up are just going to dissipate, or will there be contemplated now that, let's say, if Cameroon goes through this process, they will now be sensitized to the nationalist, what caused the nationalists to take that option. So we'll say the government of Cameroon or the winning side, say if it's a federalist, would there be a consideration, do you think, or would there be a push for a consideration of, can we accommodate this nationalist sentiment without penalizing it or making or reacting, responding with impunity? You said in Indonesia they were angry, they responded, people died. So is that not back to where we are, where, you know, we voted back in the 1961s and there was, you know, some there were people who did not support either of the options, and over the years it has grown and grown to where we are now, where the nationalist sentiment is really powerful. So that's why I'm struggling.
No, you are given a scenario where you believe that the majority loses. It's not possible. You get the point? Yes, because you see, yeah, because if it is the majority opinion in the Southern Cameroon is that of the independencies, then the independencies will win. If everywhere that you envisage a situation, the only way that the situation will persist is that if the majority is unhappy with it. You get the point? Right. That is how it will happen. Yes. If the majority doesn't win, then there's something went wrong. Something went wrong. Because as I've explained to you, the nationalist feeling in the Southern Cameroon is what has led to this war. Because we have decided that we will no longer admit La République du Cameroon to simply move in and out and take control of our own territory as if we did not exist. We exist, and we want to be masters of our own destiny. So we have decided that La République du Cameroon will no longer have any say in our territory. So we say a referendum. Now, during that period, I find it hard to see the people of the Southern Cameroon, if it were a majority who would say, we don't believe in this war, no. Because they are fighting with their people, isn't it? They are suffering with their people. So I don't envisage a situation where the majority loses the referendum. No. It is only a minority that can lose the referendum, and the minority will find a way to fit itself in the entire process. Now, let us even think of the absurd situation where unionists win. It would be foolhardy and stupid for La République du Cameroon to take vengeance on the independencies or federalists or whoever. Because you see, if you have a house, you don't want to have a conflict there every day, because as long as there is conflict, La République du Cameroon cannot progress. It cannot. So it is just a matter of good governance that you should address everybody's sentiment and try to see that everybody has its own place in the state that you are governing. So even if unionists or if independentists were in that state, they would do so. But I explained that we are not fighting because there's bad governance in La République du Cameroon. Okay. Our people should know that if there is good governance in Nigeria, La République will not surrender its own country to Nigeria. If there's good governance in the United States, Canada will not surrender its own country to America. That's so right. We want to own our destiny, whatever that destiny is. Even if it is worse than that of La République du Cameroon, it will be a destiny created by ourselves. Right. And I want to remind you about something. Look at the way God operates. Have you ever asked yourself why God allows you to do all the things you do, even though He has the power to take the free will away from you? Your free will is more important than what you do with it. Your free will is more important than what you do with it. Because until you have that free will, you cannot choose what to do. So therefore, our people should know that whether we'll have embezzlement, whether we'll have whatever we have in our, it will be our own shit that we're eating. It will not be that of La République du Cameroon. So let our people know why we are fighting, because people keep making mistakes. Oh, if this one has embezzled money, then why are we fighting? If this one is unjust, why? No, we're not fighting because we believe that we'll be perfect in our own country.
That's
no,
right.
we're fighting because it is not right for foreigners to come into our own house and control us. That is the way God has created it. So that is the way it is. So we should not mistaken why we are fighting. Yeah.
Very, very powerful. And Mr. Denis, I think we will conclude on that powerful note, which is that our people should know. And I think that point hasn't been made quite strong out there, that, you know, you said it very well. We are fighting for our liberty and freedom. And however, whatever yokes that comes, that is our yoke to bear, but we cannot
Absolutely.
bondage
Absolutely.
and then bearing the yoke of others. And then, you know, so we're fighting to be free to bear whatever yoke that comes with that freedom, rather than being in bondage.
Exactly.
Thank you so much.
Everybody should make their own mistakes and learn from their mistakes.
Right.
That is the way God has created it. The people of the Southern Cameroon, if the mistakes are their own, they will learn and grow from it. But if there's somebody else's mistake, they will never learn from those mistakes. They will never learn from those mistakes.
Very well said. Thank you so much for taking the time at this late hour and being here. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I'm hopeful that I plan to run this series on a number of weeks, and I'm hoping that I'll bring you back once we get to the meat of things.
That'll be all right.
Yeah.
That'll be all right. That'll be all right.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you too. Thank you too.
Okay.
Thank you. All right.
Well, our viewers, that is it. This was Mr. Denis, the spokesperson for the Coalition for a Referendum. You've heard him loud and clear. You've heard all the salient points that have been made. So don't be confused. Don't feel as if you don't have clarity. We have clarity as to what it is that we want and what it is that we need and where we are going. But we must be able to open up our eyes, open up our minds to all the different paths that could lead us to where we're going. And certainly, this is another powerful path that is being introduced to us. So let us continue to consider it. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, and we'll see you in our next broadcast next weekend. Have a good night.
Thank you. Right.
I'm your host here, Chuck McFarlane. Welcome to